Good evening, this is N7GES. Welcome to the NCARC Tech Net. We meet each Monday evening here and to discuss technical issues for about amateur radio, sometimes other related issues. I always say again, suggestions and ideas are very welcome. I understand I got a bunch at the ceremony, and I'm looking forward to getting those, and I thank all of you who did contribute to that. The easiest way to contact us is to email elmers@ncarc.net. And that's the easiest way to get us TechNet info. You're listening either on the 447-275 repeater, the 447-75 repeater, via Echolink by W0UPS, or on the YouTube stream that we're doing. And those streamed programs are available for later review as well. I hope I'm getting through okay. So anyway, I'll first start with check-ins, and I'd like to just find out who's listening. And you can always still join the net later, even if you haven't checked in. But it's just nice to know who's out there and who might have comments or questions as you check in. Just indicate if you have something you'd like to comment on or a question when you check in, and then I can check back with you. So let's take check-ins at this point. N7GES. It's going to be one of those nights. Let's go ahead and try to make check-ins, please, and I'll acknowledge you, and we'll go on from there, please.
This is Kilo Echo Zero, Lima Charlie Kilo KE0LCK, the other Mike from Windsor.
Good evening, Kevin. This is Whiskey Zero Alpha Alpha W0ASP, DX via Echolink from Puerto Rico.
Kilo Zero Echo Victor, Eric and Carr.
Kilo Alpha 6 Echo Tango Echo, Jim and Loveland.
November 1, Romeo Delta Charlie, Ryan and Loveland.
Okay.
This is Kilo Echo Zero Sierra Oscar Romeo Mike Mobile Fort Collins.
Okay. Let's stop for a moment. And let me recognize KE0SOR N1RDC. Ryan, is that a new call for you?
Yes, sir. Previous Kilo Echo Zero Tango Mike Delta.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, and congratulations. Very good. Also recognizing KA6ETE, K0EV, W0ASP. Great to hear you, Terry, from where you're at there, and really glad you took time to check in. Is everything going okay for you?
Oh, yeah, Kevin, we're getting her done. We're about to pack out in a couple days.
Well, we're certainly glad you're here, and really glad you took the time to check in. And please jump in later. We'll try to remember to make sure and leave space for you to get in via Echolink, and that is important, folks, to remember. If you let the repeater drop, that for sure leaves time for them to jump in. And also KE0LCK, welcome, Mike, thank you. Who else is out there that would like to check in?
This is N0EMP, Greg in Fort Collins with Debbie, K0DBE.
This is Alpha Echo 0 Charlie Foxtrot Ben, Fort Collins.
This is
KG0HM, Lauren, Fort Collins.
This is W0DAS Whiskey 0 Delta Alpha Sierra, Dave in Fort Collins.
Okay. Welcome to W0DAS, KG0HM, AE0CF, K0DBE, and N0EMP. Thank you very much for being here. Anybody else want to check in at this point?
November 0, Whiskey, India, carry on.
Okay. Welcome to N0WIQ. Thank you, Carrie. Okay, well, let's get started. We will be happy to take check-ins later on as well. If you want to make a comment later on, please feel free to do so. Even if you haven't checked in, I'm still happy to take additional comments or additional check-ins as well. So feel free to jump in. Today, I had suggested to see on a subject that we've somewhat covered in previous nets to some degree, but it never hurts to revisit this for folks that have either forgotten or need a reminder. Why the antenna is the most important part of the amateur station. We often need reminders of this, and so there's lots of reasons for this, and we'll probably end up talking about some of the specific reasons as well. But let's just have a discussion and see. Can somebody start out by giving us some basics as to why the antenna is so much more important than pretty much anything else in the station?
W0USC.
W0USC, good evening, sir. Did you want to comment, or were you just checking in?
Quick comment. I would say number one would be the operator, number two would be the antenna. But I'm just going to do a quick check-in and listen to you guys. I'm getting on the edge of coverage here.
Okay, very good. Well, certainly operator is the most important. Assuming we have no operator, we have no station and nobody did. So that's valid. However, beyond that, what is the importance? Not trying to be stupidly obvious, but why are we more tied to a good antenna than anything else we could name in the station? Let me put it another way. And I don't know if I'm being heard, so somebody might have to jump in. I don't have another radio to monitor right now. Is there something I can do with an identical piece of equipment to make my station as effective as having a best quality antenna that I can come up with?
W0AS0. A lot of static on this, but I'm going to break in here.
Please stand by for just a moment. I will be right back to the station. I'm testing. Yes, boy, it is going well. Okay, Johnny, I would love to hear what you had to say. I don't know if we're going to have a chance or not, but we'll see if the repeater will clear. And then if you want to jump in and make your comment, I'd love to hear what you had to say.
This is W0AS. My comment on the question is why is the antenna the most important part of the ham radio station? Well, I think nowadays, pre-made radios, there isn't much you can do with them or about them. You can't modify them very much. So it remains the component of the amateur radio station that we can do the most about. U0ASP, back to that.
Okay, Terry, stand by, please. Terry, I appreciate that comment. That was an interesting one, that our equipment is a little more difficult to modify now, and therefore the antenna is helpful. I just thought I'd reiterate that, if anybody had trouble hearing it. Terry, what would you like to comment?
The radio and the repair would change because the better the antenna, the more you can hear with the radio. But if the radio is not as really good, you can run out of noise on the radio. If you have a very good radio, you can change antennas to see which one is better with the decent radio also. So, I mean, the antenna is the primary hearing part, receiver, so that you can hear any more than you can hear the core antenna. So, I'll just put it that away.
Okay, the better antenna, the better you can hear, the better you can, whatever radio. Makes good sense. Anybody else comments in this area here?
KB0SCX, George and George.
Good evening, George. You have a comment for us?
Yes. The antenna is the only part of the station that flow through the station, used in both receiving and transmitting. An improvement to make the antenna improves both sides.
Okay, good point, and thank you. It's certainly common to both parts. This is N7GES. This is the NCARC Tech Net, such as it is this evening. So I appreciate everybody's heads and being patient here. Okay, can somebody explain, for those of us who need reminders, why we can't just use radios with a better preamp, better transmit power to overcome lack of quality in the antenna? Is somebody trying to comment?
Kevin, 0KN here. I'm about 5 minutes away from I can unlink those repeaters. Those 750 is where the noise is coming from. I'll unlink it as soon as I get to a computer. That'd be it.
Okay, thank you very much, James. We'll kind of hold on, we can get to that point. Thank you, though, for checking in. N7GES, and this is the text. We'll kind of stand by for a few minutes. If anybody would like him to make a comment, we'll see what we can hear, and if we need to rehash a few things that were not covered, we can certainly do so.
This is Kilo 1 Delta Echo Golf, Mike. I'm just checking in. It's hard to listen.
I got you, K1DEG, and yeah, this is tricky. So we'll kind of stand by here. Just go off just a few minutes. And we'll kind of stand by. We can accomplish in just a few minutes. This is N7GES. We'll go on in a few minutes. while we're waiting for a minute or so, I will go ahead and attempt to make an announcement or two, which is we're going to have the next 2 weeks off. I'm definitely going to be busy in church next Monday evening, and many of you will probably be celebrating New Year's the following Monday evening. So we'll convene the TechNet on January 7th. That is 2 Mondays off in the next couple of weeks. And as I said at the beginning of Net, if you were able to hear me, I do appreciate the suggestions that I got from the meeting, which I haven't actually seen yet, but which I've promised to get in an email from Joe. So I do appreciate it very, very much. It's kind of too bad we can't always get those just over the net or the email, or sometimes getting together in person is definitely a good way to get suggestions. So we'll certainly do our best to work along that work when I get it, and see that if we can provide things that are even more useful for you.
Katie's there too, well.
Yeah, hi there, Joe.
Sent that email about an hour or so about it. Did you get it?
I don't think I had checked the email when I just barely got home at 5 o'clock.
Okay, well, it should be. Let me double check here, and it says, come on. It says I sent it at 10:01.
We're kind of standing by for James here, so I'll take a quick look and see if it. But I do appreciate that, Joe. Your voicemail, and I was in the middle of something. I do appreciate that very much.
Go. Is a great thing. Listen on the internet frequency, and you won't get all the interference if you're close enough to the station.
Thank you for the suggestion. That would be the input of the 275, because that's where most of us are. However, hopefully we'll have running taken care of here shortly. Yes, Joe, I did get your email, so it is here, and I'm looking forward to. I'll look through it here sometime after Net. Thank you for taking the time to do that for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't get to it yesterday. One of those days, and I went to work about 3:30 this morning, so I didn't have time this morning. But I'm glad. Yeah, I'm terribly sorry I didn't get to it yesterday, but it was one of those days.
Oh, not a big deal. I didn't have time to do too much with it between now and between yesterday and now anyway. So it'll always work out one way or the other. Who was the station that made the suggestion about the listening on input?
Oh, Kilo Zero Echo Victor.
Oh, okay, Eric. Thank you. Yeah, most of us are probably not running a lot of power, but you may be amazed. If you have a good antenna, you may hear a lot of us. So there we go. Anyway, I'm sorry for the folks listening to the YouTube stream as well. That's definitely going to be a difficult net to listen to. And maybe we'll have to edit it later and make it a little more useful to review here.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'm listening to you on the input with a 13-element beam pointed exactly probably 180 degrees away from you. Then I've got a mag mount antenna that I'm transmitting on right now, and that's how I'm getting into the repeater. And then I'm going to look at, let me see, I've got another beam that's pointed, well, you're coming in okay on that one too. Kilo Zero Echo Victor.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give it a try here again because it looks like we may be clear here. So let me go back to a previous question that I asked, and I got at least one response from it, I think. No, I haven't gotten that far. What I had asked was...
Node 1750 disconnected.
Okay. Thank you, James. What I had asked was, why would we not choose to use higher power and better preamp or more preamp there in order to overcome a deficiency of a good antenna? And I realized that this sometimes we do this sometimes when we have no choice, certainly. But just for those who may have forgotten or need a reminder, what are the reasons we would want to go with the antenna improvements first?
Well, I guess I can talk if you can't find anybody else. TYU.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I kind of hate to use analogies like this because I won't say that every cheap antenna is a bad antenna for UHF, VHF. HF is another story. But it's kind of like a funnel. If you've got a big end on the one side and you're pushing a lot of power into a funnel, it basically will not give you back what you really want out of it. My opinion for UHF, VHF is that a good commercial antenna, and I mean a good one, a Diamond. I like Diamond, Comet. They're all really pretty good. But you don't have as many trouble with SWRs. And what SWRs is, and I believe you talked about this before, is you don't have any feedback coming back from the SWR, so you can destroy a radio and some other things with that. So the better the antenna, I do believe the cheaper radio you could actually put on that thing, because you've actually got dB gain off of a lot of these UHF, VHF antennas that you don't have to have a lot of power to push through them in order to make it work.
N0WIQ with a comment.
Okay. Yeah, Joe, I understand the idea of SWR not being sometimes as much of a problem, certainly, and that helps. Keeps from cutting your power back. But there's also the gain issue, which some antennas provide and some do not. So that's also, all of that is very well worth considering. Carrie, go ahead.
It's like this. You either buy or build an antenna that you think is going to do the job, and you hook up a radio to it, and if you hear something, you're happy. If you don't hear something, you have to do a little figuring on that. Well, there are tests to test the sensitivity of the receiver so that you might know that it's working just fine, and then you can think about how to change the antenna. But if you hook them up together and they don't work, you say, what do I try first? Well, another radio might be of use, whether it's a good radio or a bad radio. And of course, you have to match the antenna to the transmitter, or you have SWRs. And bad enough SWRs can blow up the output of the transmitter. And since most radios are transceivers anymore, That's something to take into consideration also.
Okay. Call on a few people here. Let me see. If people wouldn't mind. LCK, if you're still with us, Mike, and I know we may have lost a few people because of the interference. Any comments to add to this?
Evan, are you asking me, K1DEG?
I wasn't, but I can in a bit here. I was actually looking for KE0LCK. Okay, Eric, how about you, K0EV? I know that you have done a lot of antenna work already.
Okay, I'll throw in my 2 cents. K0EV. Yeah, earlier, if you can't hear them, you can't work them. If they can't hear you, the same way goes. You mentioned earlier about preamps and power amplifiers. If you spend the money on a better antenna, that has a little more gain, and the other part of that is the feed line to your antenna. If you're using, little RG58 or something to go 70 feet up and out to, something stuck out there on a pole, that you're going to lose a lot on both directions, both transmit and receive. So, spend the money on the antenna, spend the money on the feed line, and then after that, you can improve your rig.
Okay. Any more comments on why we stick to the antenna and or feed line before we worry about so much which rig we're using or that sort of thing? I know these are basic questions, but I also know that we're looking at beginners and things that we've sometimes learned but haven't done a lot of experimenting with because we haven't done a lot of other rigs, other antennas, and that sort of thing. And so this is something I thought we should at least cover again in review here.
And if I haven't, I'll say something else.
Actually, I was hoping to have some of our other folks that have checked in jump in here first, Carrie.
I'm sorry I've had so much experience, but there are things that will blow out the input of a receiver also. And so you might have to check how the receiver is doing before you jump on the antenna, but on the other hand, a good antenna will go a long ways to verifying receivers also. And of course, if it receives well, it can transmit well as long as it's matched to the transmitter.
W0ASP with a comment?
Yeah, I'm glad you're still with us, Terry. Go ahead, please.
Well, since you mentioned preamplifiers, and this usually refers to receivers, there is a really remarkable asymmetry. Sorry, I think I lost that.
We heard asymmic, and then you lost, and then you left us.
Yeah, with regards to antennas receiving and transmit, there's a remarkable asymmetry, particularly in the HF bands, when it comes to receiving and transmitting. For transmitting, you need an antenna that is an efficient radiator, and that generally means something that is a fairly large or tuned to the frequency of transmission. For reception, what you need is a sufficiently large antenna, and that's not very big, in order for your received antenna noise to exceed your preamplifier noise. And in many received cases, you can do this with an HF antenna that is only a few meters long. Because there is so much HF noise out there, even just atmospheric noise, never mind man-made noise, it does not take much of an antenna to get enough signal into an amplifier to exceed the amplifier's noise. And that's the key on reception, W0ASB.
Okay. I just would like to clarify, make sure I understood what you were saying there. Is for a receive antenna, I think did I understand correctly that you were saying it doesn't necessarily have to be extremely large in order to present enough signal to overcome preamp noise?
That's a correct interpretation.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. But that doesn't preclude that a larger antenna or better tuned antenna may not perform better still. Is that correct as well?
Yes, in general, the larger antenna will work on transmit and will also work for reception. This whole thing about small antennas and receiving preamps presumes you have a different receive antenna than you have a transmit antenna.
K0EV.
Go ahead, Eric.
Oh yeah, now when we get down into HF, it's a whole different ballgame than VHF, UHF. Because what you're trying to do is get your signal above the noise, and the noise may be preamp noise, well, not too likely, but it's often man-made or atmospheric noise. So as far as smaller is better, yeah, loops can work if they're directional. Well, actually, what I use on the low bands is a 560-foot long beverage because it's very quiet as far as picking up man-made and atmospheric noise other than in the direction I want to hear. But of course, you've got to have one pointed at every direction you want to hear. So anyway, you know, there's a lot of options, and it's a lot of fun to play ham radio. Back to you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I believe I understand correctly that gain is going to affect both transmit and receive. Somebody can just confirm if I'm wrong on that.
And you are correct. If an antenna has gain, it works both ways.
Okay, and I've heard a lot of people mention an antenna with a certain amount of gain works as if you were amplifying your power of your transmitter. So, but I guess what I'm wondering is there an equivalent way to interpret a gain antenna for receive than as we did for transmit? Obviously, we're not dealing with power out, we're dealing with receive signal coming in. And we don't hear that, I don't think we hear that talked about quite as much. Eric, am I wrong on that? And is there a similar comparison we can make to what people often do for transmit signal?
No, you're right on, Kevin. And yeah, we just assume that basically things are, symmetrical in both directions. Then when you get into, let's see, directivity a bit, there are some figures of merit that you can use on the receive side that improve things, especially if you go with a separate receive antenna.
We've had a lot tonight discussion about separate transmit and receive antennas. There might not be a lot of us that are using separate antennas, but obviously there are reasons why we might do that. Can anybody talk a little bit more about that?
Of course I can, N0WIQ.
Yeah, actually, Kerry, could you hold off for a bit? Because we have several other folks checked in here that we haven't yet heard from, and I'd kind of like to make sure that everybody has a chance if they have info here. So if you would hold off a minute, I'll come back to you. Anybody else, please? Zero EMP, are you still with us? Okay, I guess we're back here. Okay, this is N7GES. I don't know exactly what happened, but looks like we're back online here. Who had I asked for? I had asked if N0EMP was still online, Did not get a response. It's OK0EV. I'll come back to you again for the moment, and I did promise that I would come back to Carrie. I had asked, there's a lot of people using two antennas, one for receive and one for transmit. Could you talk a little bit about other reasons why we might want to do this?
Okay, yeah, Kilo Zero Echo Victor. On the HF bands, you know, there's a lot of receive antennas that are very good for discriminating against man-made and atmospheric noise, whereas your transmit antenna on the, especially the lower HF bands, vertical polarization works best for, you know, distance communications, but it also on the receive side picks up a lot of noise. So there's one reason for using separate receive and transmit antennas. On the the best example I have up on VHF UHF is if you're running split site repeater. We put one on back in the early 70s, and our transmit antenna was on a TV tower, and our receive antenna was on a cable TV tower, and we were about little less than a mile apart between the two. So that way we didn't have to, you know, worry about all the problems with trying to keep the transmit signal out of the receiver and being able to receive while the transmitter was on and all that kind of stuff. So that was another reason to have a split site. But that's, you know, kind of special purpose if you're a repeater. Now, the other thing that people do is on the internet, they listen to the receivers that are available over the internet, and especially on HF, that's kind of cool. K0EV.
Okay, thank you. Lots of good information there, and I know that if N0EMP were here, he would be able to talk to us a bunch about multiple receive antennas and diversity antennas, which will help in a situation where you have a fluctuating signal, and be able to bring that in more clearly. And that's probably, again, more of a problem in HF communications, but could also apparently probably be a situation we might find in some VHF, UHF as well. But I have heard some pretty impressive recordings made in stereo where one channel is using a vertical antenna and another is using horizontal, or at least two different directions, and how you hear the signal fading from one side to the other, but you can always hear the signal. But if you were listening to just one of those channels, you would lose it. Fascinating stuff, and it requires a little more equipment to receive that way, but you can also bring your ability to receive various signals up a lot by doing something like that as well. And N0WIQ, what did you have?
Well, for one thing, for a comparison between the antennas, you gotta have two of them to compare. And years ago, and you can still buy them separately, the transmitter and the receiver didn't come in the same package like a transceiver is these days for the most part. So, I mean, if you have a transmitter and a receiver that are separate, you can put an antenna on each one of them and do away with some of the stuff that you have to do with a transceiver. Of course, the stuff you have to do with a transceiver is often just designed into the transceiver. But, hey, it's one thing to you have to have two antennas to make a comparison between the two. And of course you can make transmit comparison and receive comparisons, but hey, that's what just the only thing you want to think about is you got to have two to compare.
Yeah, obviously it's a little hard to compare with one. So yes, that's good. N7GES, this is the TechNet such as it is this evening. It's interesting when you have problems at the beginning. It's sometimes hard to get people back. We picked a basic subject, and it may be so basic that we've had a little trouble getting people well, I'm not sure that it's the basic topic that's scared people away as much as other things. However, important things to keep in mind, and getting back to the antenna, all the power you have in the world may get you out a little better with a poor antenna, but it still may not receive well enough to equal what you're putting out. You need something that does well both directions, gain-wise, and you might find that you find certain antennas that are better for receive and transmit. Now this brings up the question, I know that we can reuse antenna switches easily enough. How difficult is it to use multiple antennas? Is there a way to use multiple antennas without switching, such as to divide the antennas between transmit and receive, so that you're not having to manually switch back and forth when you're switching the radio from transmit to receive if you're using a single rig for both parts?
K0EV.
Go ahead, EV.
Okay, Kevin. Yeah, on HF, a lot of the rigs have a separate input for receive antenna only, and we'll switch back and forth for you automatically. If not, it's just a coax switch relay that you can do. Up on the VHF UHF. That's a little bit different. So there you probably want to have separate receivers, separate transmitters, that kind of thing, to switch it for diversity. Other than that, I'm not sure there's a real purpose to do that, but on HF there definitely is. I don't know if I addressed your question, Kevin, but yeah, let's go at that again. K0EV.
I was writing, and no, I think you did fine. I know my rig has a separate input for a receive antenna, and I believe you have to choose which one it's going to be, but at least then I believe will continue to use the other antenna for its transmit antenna, and then use the secondary one for receive, and that would certainly accomplish what I was looking at. I don't know how common that is for many of our transceivers nowadays, but it seems like that would be a very, very handy thing to use. I'm guessing that it's more common for people to have multiple antennas and an antenna switch that they use fairly frequently to check between several antennas and compare and that sort of thing. Am I right? Is that actually the most common thing people are doing now?
Yeah, I think so. That's what I've seen in visiting various shacks and so forth, and reading the magazines. You have the more aluminum you have up in the air on HF, the better. And you have either a remote switch or a switch in the shack that you just spin through, trying to get the best signal.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. Anybody else have comments or questions along these lines? We were really trying to discuss why the antenna is so important to the ham station, and there certainly are a lot of issues that go along with that. Do we have any additional questions for the net in that area? All right. Any additional comments in this area along these lines?
N0WIQ.
Go ahead, Kerry.
It's one of those things that with amateur radio and other communications equipment, they don't come with a built-in antenna like a AM radio would or something like that. But on the other hand, you always have to make choices. And every man-made antenna is a compromise. Every situation with every different ham is also different. So every ham has to make his own decision about the antennas, whether he wants to spend the bucks or spend the effort building the antenna and all that kind of stuff. The man-made antenna is a compromise. Pick the compromise that works for the individual ham.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. Any additional comments?
Yeah, that's a great point, Kerry. This is K0EV. Yeah, antennas are not as well. They're building a rig is kind of a challenge these days, but building an antenna is still within the realm of all of us. So, go for it, experiment with it, buy some aluminum, buy some wire, and try different things.
Okay, excellent reminder there. Thank you very much. We are not in the times that we used to be years back where people did build their own rigs as much. It can still be done, but as you said, it's a lot more work. But certainly we can do an awful lot of things with wire and metal and getting it up in the air. We had a double while when Eric was starting to transmit. Is there somebody else that wants to add to our topic here? Okay. Do we have any other amateur-related questions that anybody would like to put forth before we close tonight? Okay, once again, remember there will be no net next Monday or the Monday after, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. I will be busy, certainly, and I suspect several of you, others of you will be as well. So we will reconvene on January 7, Monday. I don't know about the topic yet. I have plenty of things to review, but I will get something posted on the website, and so look for that to come up sometime in the next 3 weeks before we get to January. Thank you again. As I've said before, with suggestions or questions for the net, please email elmers@ncarc.net. Comments are welcome, suggestions are welcome, and very much appreciated. I thank all of you very much and have a wonderful and pleasant holiday season, and we'll see you in January. Actually, January will probably be an open topic. since it's our first first Monday of the month, and we've been doing open topics on those days. So please come with your questions, and I will come with mine if I need them. Thank you all very much, 73s, and I'm closing the net at this time. Have a wonderful evening. This is N7GES.
This presentation was brought to you by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.